just acknowledge that one of our local representatives is here in our audience today, and Mr. Henry Cullen, who looks out for us. And thank you, Henry, for coming and participating today. Bruce, maybe you can start for the POA, please.
The POA welcomes the opportunity to meet with you folks time to time, and we're glad to see you're out and about. You're not frozen, that you're doing well, and that we're glad you're here so that we can share some information with you. Before we start, I'd like to introduce some of the POA staff as well as board members that are here. So if you would stand, board members. I think I see Cap, and I see Rick Blau, Cap Purvis, and I see Steve, right? And I see Pat White, and I didn't see the other ones. Oh, you're too short back there. And that's our newest member, Carla Johnson. So board, we're glad you're here. And now as far as our staff, we have Winston Blazer, our general manager. We have Mitzi Lane, the deputy or the assistant general manager. I guess I just promoted you, see? And then I have Parker Owen, who is our CFO. And we have Jeff Gagley here, over here to our left. Stand up, Jeff. And then I think I saw some folks here from TVB. If you'll stand up. Keith. Did I not see Keith? I thought I did earlier. But anyway, if I missed any of you, I'm sorry, but they're out doing a hard job, I'm quite sure. So what we want to do tonight was catch you up on what we were able to get accomplished in 2018, some of the highlights. That will be covered by Winston, and then I will talk about some of the things that the board's thinking about for 19, and then I believe Mitzi was supposed to come up and talk about continuous improvement, but I'm going to ask her to let me go ahead and do the update on the long-range plan, and if you don't mind, and then we will have Parker Owen come up and talk to you about the financial health of the village and some financial considerations. I will apologize early. Let me tell you that I won't be able to be with you the whole evening. I am going to be leaving around 5:30, and I've got to go downtown and be downtown by 7 o'clock. And I promised Brenda that I would be out of here by 5:30. So we're going downtown. If you guys haven't done, we're going downtown to see Violins of Hope. If you know what that is, that's the violins and all that was associated with the Holocaust. So we're going down to see that tonight, and it was a conflict, but pushing the envelope here, but hopefully we'll get done and we'll get out of here. And I'm quite sure that the 5 other board members that are here will be just chomping at the bits to answer the questions when they come later in the evening. So sorry about that, board, but I know you can do it. Okay, so we'll start with Winston.
Thank you, Bruce. My name is Winston Blazer, General Manager of the POA, and I was given very specific instructions. I didn't have very long to talk, so this is going to be quick and brief, but I wanted to cover some of the highlights of 2018, and this is just a few of them. This is not all of them, but these are some things I thought stood out in my mind I wanted to share with you this afternoon. CI, which stands for Continuous Improvement, has been in existence now for 7 years, and it's a program that Mitzi's going to cover in more detail later. But I'm just very proud of the fact that the employees of the association have engineered over $1 million in savings. And, they hit the $1 million mark, $1,045,000 to be exact. And that is money that's back to you guys. Okay. I'm not skilled at this part. Also, marketing is an area I wanted to cover. I can remember before we had any kind of a dedicated marketing program, we would have the occasional people that would come by the POA office and inquire about lots, homes, life in the village, and information like that. And several years ago, the board wanted to implement a more formal program, begin that. In 2018, we had over 8,000 people come through the doors of the Wellness Center for one reason or another to check on life in Tellico Village. That is a very monumental number, I think. Very good for you guys. It tells me that we're doing something right, because of that 8,000 visitors, attributed to the marketing program, 238 homes were sold out of a total of 387 homes that were listed on MLS. That's over 61% of the sales in the village that can be correlated back to this marketing program. And that is a very good sign for you and your assets that you live in here in the village. And we're trying to keep that up, and I believe the board was very wise in that decision. Also, we permitted 159 new homes. When I started work here, we had less than 800 homes. Now, with that 159, we're over 4,300 homes in the village, which puts us at 2/3 build out. So your village is growing quite healthy, and you are 2/3 of the way of being filled up if you want to look at percentages that way. Another program that I'm very excited about, Simon Bradbury, our rec manager's been on board for 2 years. Took him a year to get up to speed with my organization and working with the board and so forth. But this last year, he and his chain gang created 5 more miles of trails. We have a total of 14 miles of trails in the village that is basically attributed to the hard work of a lot of volunteers and Simon. 10 here in the main village, 4 in Kahiti. Before his existence, we had very little of that, but he's very big into the walking. And this is also something that we've learned through long-range planning over the last 10 years, is a very important element to the people that are looking at retirement. Also, we introduced paddleboard, so if you have not paddleboard before, you need to call the rec department and get on board with that. And kayaking. We have those down at the docks, and you can sign up for those programs, and you can experience the lake from a whole different perspective. And it's also a very energetic and a good way to get some exercise. This year was also something that was very monumental. The Tellico Clubhouse and the Kahiti Community Center finally made it over the hill and approved. And it will be constructed this year and will be opened up this year. The Tellico Clubhouse, I've seen on the board table for no less than 10 years. And thanks to this board, 2018 board, finally got it up over the hill, got it approved, and got it underway. And for those that are really interested, the double wide, the temporary pro shop is in place over at the Tellico to the east end of the parking lot. The move will be made tomorrow or Saturday, and then it'll be business as usual come Sunday and Monday. So we're making progress. Another would be Summit Medical. Now, I know the Summit Medical building opened up in the fall of 2017, but the first anniversary was last year, and this is a project that I've been working on ever since we broke ground on the Wellness Center. So this has been in my basket of to-do lists for many, many years. So I kind of have a very personal interest in this. Late last year, I checked with Ed Curtis, the CEO of Summit Medical Group, and I just told him I wanted to know honestly, how's it going? What's the usage? And, he's not going to share numbers with me, but he told me that they are ahead of their anticipated business plan, that they were already making money at the location, and the doctor has been well received, and that it has been going so well that they've added cardiology, dermatology, vascular care, and therapeutics. So things are growing up there, and I can imagine that myself and the board will probably be getting a knock on the door in 2 or 3 or 4 more years requesting an expansion to that building, but that's a wait and see on that. And then last but not least is something I wanted to bring up that I had very little to do with, but I'm very appreciative, and I'm sure many of you that travel in and out of Lenore City and Knoxville and so forth are glad to see done. The bridge and the Highway 444, I want to thank all those that had input, that gave guidance to TDOT. That's a very nice drive, and I'm very appreciative of all that work, so thank you very much.
Okay, I am up next, and I will be talking about the forerunner, or input to our goals for 2019. Board met yesterday in executive session and then we had our open board meeting, and basically I polled the board and asked them to submit areas of interest, if you will, that things that they would like to see happen or work on in the year 2019. And this is a very energetic board. And so as a result of that, I got a long list of things that we're all interested in seeing happen, and I'll go over those with you. And our plan is, over the next 2 weeks, is to boil this down to a set of goals that we will then present to you, the village, at our workshop in February. That will be February the 5th, I believe, somewhere in there. And but we'll boil those down, and we'll present them, and then we will work in earnest to make those happen. Now, having said that, the other things that don't quite show up in goals, they will be things that we will be working on with the staff to make sure that we're moving that ball a little further down the hill as we go forward. So some of these things I'll talk to you can see very quickly. They are operational in nature. Some are strategic in nature. Our goals will probably be more strategic, but we will not forget the operational side, and we'll work with the POA staff to make those happen as well. Obviously, the first two is something that Winston talked about, the Tellico Clubhouse as well as the Kahidi Community Center. They were approved last year, and I believe it was in December, and they were included in the budget for this year. We have approved the contracts were awarded, and it's underway, as Winston mentioned. We've moved things, we're getting things. Now, from a board standpoint, we are committed to making these projects come in on time and within budget. Let me say that again, on time and within budget. I could be like President Bush and say, read my lips, but I won't go there, okay? But we are committed to making that happen. If we get behind a little bit here, always the question is, for Jeff and his group, is how you gonna make that time up? And so we're committed to it. Same way with the completing the renovations of the Wellness Center. We started those in 18. We have the new HVAC in place that will be the huge dehumidifier, if you will, that will keep the building from deteriorating like it has over the last 5 years or so because of the greenhouse effect that we had in the building and the chemicals, et cetera. So that's in place. We will wait until later this year to put a new roof on the place, and we'll be doing that somewhere in the August timeframe. But we're committed, we're tracking, we're having Winston update us at every meeting that we're in, and we are pushing to make these things happen on time. If you're new to the village, you know what it's like to go through the blue book with your builder, whatnot, to try to get things. It's a problem. That's the best I can say. Things are in various sections of the book, and it's hard to follow. If you're in the village and have been here for a while, and you're in the process of renovating, or if you want other things, you see the same problem. So last year or so, Steve Trudak and his group started looking at that as part of the ACC, and they have come up with some structural changes, et cetera, et cetera. And so our goal this year, we want to get that finished so that when you pick up the blue book, either electronically or in paper, it's easy to find things in there, and you know where to go to find things that you're trying to do, putting a new roof on or putting solar panels on, et cetera. And so we're in the process of updating that. Now, a close companion of that is as the village grows and as we start filling up these lots and these interior lots, we have drainage problems and we have runoff, trees are disappearing, so this beautiful place that you used to see that was wooded, it's thinning out. As you can imagine, what happens when you start building 150 homes a year or so. So there's obviously some concern in the village of what are we going to do to make sure that we're abiding by green, keeping this village green. And so we will be looking at that. What do we need to add to the Blue Book, either as an appendix or a new document that was said, here's the things that we want to do to make sure that the village remains beautiful and it is environmentally on track to be environmentally friendly community, if you will. So we will be working those issues. In addition to that, we found that when we went through the process of approving the projects for Tellico and Kahiti, as well as some work we did up at the Wellness Center, we found that, and we also did a study this past year that found that we do have problems with space, meaning meeting rooms, as well as parking. But what we found was, as much as anything, we have a scheduling problem, and so we'll be working that. But we also found that in the future, per working with our long-range planning group, we know that we're going to be doing other amenities as we age, as we grow. We're going to need more of this and more of this and more of this. So not only do we have to look to see if we can financially do these things, we actually have to find places to put these things. And Pat White reminds us that we need to start at the north end of 444 and go all the way down past, I get these trails wrong over in Kahiti, but we need to follow those trails to the end, and we need to look at all of our facilities to make sure that what can be done at each site. Are we landlocked? Can we, or if we expand the building, can we expand parking to go with it, et cetera? So we're going to do a study that shows us at each one of these locations what we have, what can be added, et cetera. And so we want to track what we can do in the future as we grow. Communications. Several years ago, when I was elected to the board for the first time, one of my pledges was we would try to be as open as possible, and I hope that I have been open as possible. So I basically think, for example, now, and I've been reminded by our newest board member, as well as some of the ones that came on last year, that we can always do a better job of communicating. If not, people get on Next Door Neighbor and they tell us what the POA is doing instead of us telling the people what the POA is doing. So what we need to do is a better job of getting information to you or making it readily accessible through the internet with tabs or whatever, so that we can get up and you can find the information and we can push it to you as well as you pulling it. So we promise that we're going to take a look, see what we can do to be able to communicate with you in a better fashion. Last year's budget cycle, we went through it in the process of approving the amenities, as well as making sure that we had money to do the roads and to look at our sewer system and all those kinds of things in the infrastructure. It reminded us that, that we don't have pockets that are all that deep. And as a result of that, you saw what we had to do this year. We had to raise the assessments. So what we need to do is look to see what we're going to be doing in the future, and then we need to see how much we need to be setting aside so that we can replace Chota Center after so many years, or we can add more parking lots, things of that nature. So Steve Snyder on the board is really chomping at the bits to get after this, and I'm quite sure that that will in some way become one of our goals this year. So along with that, we do a great job every year of putting our budget together, and all of the department heads have all the minutia behind it on the onesies and twosies that go together and make the threesies and foursies. And as a result of that, when we put a budget out there, when you see it, you don't see the onesies and twosies, you just see the result. So what we need to do as a board is we need to make sure that those onesies and twosies out there, not only are we spending money and spending it on time and properly, but we need to see, are we getting things done that we said we're going to get done? And so we need ways, as Steve has pointed out, we need non-financial indicators. Big word, right? Big words. But it's something we need to do to make sure that we're spending your money effectively and we're getting the results that we had planned for. We do have an HR type guy on our board, Mr. Rick Blau, and he keeps us honest, and he basically says that, you know, we ask these people to participate in our committees, and we asked you to run for the board, but we make the process of applying for this a little cumbersome with our application process. So he said we need to streamline that, and we need to beef up the interview process so that we're getting people to apply and we're getting the right people in the right places. So I think we're going to be looking at that in addition to making it easier for you to run for the board. So all you guys, raise your hand now if you want to run for the board, and tell us how much easier we want that process of applying to be, right? So that's what we're going to do. The last two bullets, we have started working on those. Last year, we have worked with our local government, the county commission, the county mayor. We've worked with our state legislatures on some of our needs. We had some meet and greet meetings last year during the campaign season. It's just so that we could educate our leaders and let them know our concerns, let them know our needs, and then ask them where they could to help us. We'll continue that this year, which is the last two bullets. Basically, we want to reach out and meet with them more frequently so we can share our information. We've done that before and we'll continue to do it. We've met with the city manager of Loudoun. We've met with the mayor of Lenoir City, met with the mayor of the county, met with the commission. A perfect example of that is the accomplishments that we made when we were able to help the county, and they helped us in return by doing a win-win situation on the lot sales. There's more of that to come. We can work together to make this a better community and to help the village along the way. What we need also is an education program, if you will, political, to let you folks in the village know what's going on in the county. Henry does a good job of going on TVB and telling us every once in a while, but you guys need to know the impact that this village is having, and we need your feedback, and we need you guys to get involved. And so that's what we're going to be looking at doing this year. And by way of kind of whetting your appetite, I thought tonight I would share with you some of the information so that you can kind of see where we're going with this and see if you might be interested in serving on our political education committee that we're going to form. So I'll start out by asking you, did you know that there are approximately 8,400 people in the village? That number puts us larger than Lenoir City and Loudoun. We are a big community. We are not a city, we're a community. But we are big. Did you know that the estimated household expenditures, the ones you make in the surrounding area, are over about $86 million a year? And trickle-down effect of that is, meaning when you spend that money and it goes down and goes down and goes down, that we have about a $600 million a year impact economically in this community. Did you know that there are over 1,000 people in this general area that either are hired directly or indirectly by the POA? That's our permanent employees as well as our part-time employees, as well as other people that we have coming in here and doing things for us, okay? And did you know that the economic impact of building the 156 homes 159, that's a misprint, that we did last year is over $56 million. That's assuming that a house costs on average about $350,000 to build. So just by building 159 homes, that's $56 million coming into this surrounding area. That's all because of the people moving to Tellico Village. And did you know that as a result of those people coming in here and building, that the annual tax collections in the county as a result of us building houses and paying property tax goes up every year about $257,000. Now, what does that mean? Henry will tell you. It means that we don't have to raise taxes in the county because the county is growing. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because we are part of Loudoun County, and we want Loudoun County to do well. Did you know that Tellico villagers in the Loudoun County part pay over $7.6 million in property taxes every year? That's a lot of money. Did you know that the villagers pay, for every home that we build, we pay an additional $300,000 in a facility tax annually? Okay? And did you know that in return for all of this economic impact we have in the county, we get very little? Now, in the past, we've asked for very little, okay? Things are changing, and we need to work with the county and tell the county that we need your help. Now, I've talked to Henry before, and I know Henry and the rest of the commission say they'd love to help us, and I promise you, I'm sure they would. But they're bound by law that they say they can't because of what we are. Now, I know, having in the Army Corps of Engineers and in the governmental accounting office in my federal career, I know laws can be changed. I helped write legislation for civil works projects, and I helped when I was in GAO to write legislation as well. So I know laws can be changed. We just need to see what's the proper way of getting these done. If it turns out they can't be done, then that's just the case. But if you don't go there, you don't know until you go there. And so that's part of the process that we're going through, and that we want to change. And the way you change that is getting involved, knowing your county commissioners and working with us, working with them, et cetera, so that we can try to make some changes, okay? You can't do it if you don't get involved. Now, last year, in last year's election, we have 8,500 people, on average, 2,000 people voted. That is not being involved, okay? So whether you being involved by voting or you be involved by participating in this political education program, we need you to get involved. We need to flex our muscle. We have muscle. We need to flex it. So it's time for us to get involved. And the way we, the board, intend to help you guys get involved is that we don't want to get into telling you who to vote for or anything like that. That's not what we're all about. We just want to educate you on what's going on, what the problems are, and see if we can't get some help. We're going to start by forming a political education committee, and that will probably be somewhere in the 5 to 7 people range. Those people will be tasked with working closely with our local governments, both in the county and the cities surrounding us, as well as the state legislature. And the committee will also be keeping you aware of what's going on in local politics, as well as state. So you'll see more about this. I just wanted to introduce it, let you know that we are going to be doing something different this year than we've done in the past, and that we hope you will embrace it, and we hope that you will get involved. So with that being said, I think that ends my presentation, and I'm going to skip ahead to the long-range planning. Put on my other hat that I look like Bart Magocius, don't I? Don't I favor him a little bit? And that, or Wayne Enderly. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about those. And I asked Wayne if I made this presentation update for him, would anyone from long-range planning be here? And I see Ms. Kirk here, Susan Kirk, Is anyone else from the Long Range Planning Committee here? So Susan, I hope that you will be around to answer questions when they come up about the thing. So let me say that with that last year, if you recall, the Long Range Planning Committee did a survey. And that survey went out and over 40% of the people in the village participated. And those 40, it boiled down to 5 areas that were top 5 priorities. And those being finances, people kept saying we're interested in, that's number 1, the finances of the village. Number 2 was the vision for the future of the village. Where are we going with this village, especially with the growth and the change in demographics? Number 4 was growth, obviously. People concerned about growth. Some people would rather not see another person move here, you know? And some people would love to see this every lot in the village sold. So somewhere in the middle is the answer, and what are we doing to keep up with growth? That's a lot of concerns. Recreational amenities. You know, we have a lot of amenities, and they are used quite extensively, but everywhere you go, somebody wants bocce ball, somebody wants shuffleboard, so there's always somebody that wants something else. So how do we stay ahead of the changing demographics, and how do we stay ahead and make sure that we are offering the kinds of recreational activities that we need? So those are an area of concern for the people that participated. And last but not least is something I got into earlier. Are we keeping the village beautiful? Are we keeping it green? Are we running down? We're 30 years old, but I think if you look around, you would not recognize this as a 30-year-old village. You see how healthy and vibrant it is. So a lot of concern about that. There's with the growth, how are we going to do that? So what they did was they, instead of just taking the answers, to validate those answers, they formed 10 focus groups. And each focus, those focus groups, we had 2 focus groups pay attention to one of those 5 priorities, independent of each other. And so they went through that process. They completed that last week, I think, Susan. And now what they're doing is they're compiling all that information, and then somewhere in the second quarter of this year, they're going to come to the board and say, here's the results of this, and the board's going to take a look at it and say, great, or whatever, and then we're going to use that as a roadmap to how to keep us going down the road and keep us being the village that everybody wants it to be. So I just bring this to you a little bit to let you know that for those that participated in that survey, it didn't die on the vine. It is still going, and it's still going strong. And over the next several months, you're going to hear more about the results, and you're going to see a rollout of that, and we, the board, will then decide how we're going to make these things happen through our annual budgets and through the things that we do even during the current budget year. So with that said, I'm going to turn it back to Mitzi. And Mitzi, you can talk about continuous improvement.
Thank you. Which way did you go? This is the black one?
This is the black one, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I think the common theme today has been we'd like to take this opportunity to thank Ellen and the HOA for giving us this time to speak on behalf of what we do here at the POA. I actually began working at the POA in 2004. Since then, I've worn many hats. I've seen many of you and worked on special projects with many of you. But what I want to talk about today is something that I'm very passionate about, and it's our continuous improvement program. Winston kind of stole my thunder earlier when he told you how much we'd saved in the lifespan, but what I'd like to do today is actually highlight 2 projects that went on in 2018, both of them of which are still continuing in 2019, so we will see the savings again this year. As you'll see here in this picture, in 2018 we presented a ceremonial check to the board on behalf of the management and staff in the amount of $160,000. You may have recently seen an article in The Connection that went out, and if so, I'm sorry if this is redundant, because these 2 projects that I want to highlight were just recently in the article. See if I can get this to go forward. The first one is a cloud-based system on telephones for all of our POA facilities. Originally, we used a phone system that was a traditional Bell South PBX long distance kind of service. Well, this one is actually a voice over IP system. We went through Verizon on this. That eliminates any of our long distance charges. So basically the bulk of the savings we're seeing is from the elimination of long distance charges. So basically we're calling long distance for free. That savings alone was $70,000 last year in 2018. So that was a big project. Our IT manager is Kevin Alfont. He initiated that. And of course the savings, of course overall were great for 2018. The next project is actually, it was initiated by Parker Owen, our Chief Financial Officer. You'll hear from him shortly. He worked with our Human Resources Manager, Chris Carter, to get this project underway. We moved away from a fixed rate insurance quote and plan to one that has a lower initial premium, and we, the POA, assume part of the risk of loss. On that fixed rate program, you kind of guarantee your loss for the year ceiling, and you tend to pay more because you've got a limit to pay. So Parker was actually quoted to say that, in fact, because the POA was willing to go to this lower premium and share some of the risk, it proved that our loss experience was so low, we ended up saving a substantial amount of savings in 2018. That project also is going to be carried forward into 2019, and you will see some savings there against our budget. One final thing, I don't actually have a bullet, and I apologize, I thought about it as I was sitting here, just to give you a flavor of one of the big projects we have coming on this year in 2019. It's actually a utility billing, it's a paperless process that we're putting into place. Many of our residents now are becoming much more tech savvy, and they're going to these electronic payments and online bill payments. We will actually see moving forward that this was a great opportunity for us to jump on board with that, and you'll see a great savings this year coming out of our accounting department. So we're really proud of that. So here it just shows you from each year, 2012, all the way up until last year. And of course, as we mentioned, we reached our $1 million mark this year as far as the savings goes on the life of the program. One thing, again, I don't have on there, and I apologize, for 2019, I've challenged the managers, and our goal for this year will be to bring back to the association $165,000 in savings. What we do is, that says it's put into the reserve accounts, and at the end of every year, the board looks at the accounts and determines which reserve account would be best fitted for these savings. In years past, I know that we've put that money into the amenity reserve fund, and of course we can use that savings for things such as this Kahiti Annex replacement and the Tokwa Clubhouse replacement. So at this time, I don't know if I'll just say, here you go, Parker. Or it says stay. There we go. There we go.
Well, thank you. And my topic on your agenda is POA financing challenges. I can't possibly cover that entire topic in the time allotted, so I decided to take a slice of that challenge and talk a little bit about reserves, how those reserves are funded, what that money is used for, and you'll also get a little bit of a sense of the trade-offs that staff and the board made as we went through the budget process this year. We're very proud of the financial strength and stability of Tellico Village. Here we are over 30 years old, and we've provided good quality amenities, good quality infrastructure, and found a way to pay for those in a manner which is affordable. We also, though, have to plan for the future and for the unexpected, and that's where reserve funds come into play. Each year's budget is subjected to rigorous review and evaluation, both by the staff, Finance Advisory Committee, and the Board of Directors. Make sure we obtain good value for the resources that you've entrusted to us. One element of that budget that does receive a lot of attention is our reserve funding. And if you're not aware of it, there are 6 reserves. They're listed on the slide here, and I'll touch just briefly on each of those in turn. The reserves basically are used to accumulate funds for future projects like new amenities. to provide a cushion to absorb some of the bumps in the road, maybe some unexpected projects that cropped up or emergencies that had to be dealt with outside of our budget. And also there's a kind of a holding account that's used to accumulate funds for the annual Tellico Reservoir Development Agency lease payment. That's a mouthful, you may not be aware, but we have a lease agreement with TRDA, as it's called, that basically pays for the land that we occupy in terms of common property and also some of the buildings that are part of the village. A couple of years ago, that lease was renegotiated away from an operating lease, basically where we were paying rent, and converted that to a capital lease whereby eventually we will own the land. And so that's a very important distinction that needs to be made and understood. But TRDA lease right now costs $400,000 per year. Used to be escalating, no longer escalates, and that will eventually, we will be owners of the land that we occupy. But backing up just a moment, the top of the list, and the one that's receiving a lot of attention currently, is the Repairs and Maintenance Reserve Fund. The R&M Reserve is one of the three largest reserves, along with the Amenity Reserve and the Water and Sewer Reserve. These different reserves get funded differently. Some of them get funded from your assessment that you pay monthly. Some of them get funded from user fees. So there's some important distinctions we need to make there. R&M, though, is funded from the assessment. In 2018, the R&M Reserve received 13% of your net collectible assessments, and that's abbreviated NCA on the slide. Couldn't write that all out. Net collectible assessments, that means the assessment rate times the number of parcels or lots or homes that are actually paying that assessment, and it's net of any POA-owned lots or doubtful accounts. So I look at the cash actually coming in the door. In round numbers, there's about 6,000 performing lots or 6,000 paying owners. So we take that assessment money as it comes in. In 2018, 13% of that amount went to the R&M Reserve. And that had been adequate for a long period of time. That number had been fairly stable. But as we got into the details of the budget process, looking at 2019, and then especially looking beyond 2019, we realized that that funding level was not adequate. So we made some changes. That was indeed one of the factors that led to the board, well, it first led to staff recommending and the board agreeing that the full 5% assessment rate increase was needed and justified for 2019 and perhaps beyond, but that decision gets made 1 year at a time. In 2019, this reserve fund will be funded at 17.25% of net collectible assessments. So, that's a 4.25 point increase between 18 and 19. And thereafter, 2020 and beyond, we built into the plan a funding level of 20.75%. So you see, just in the space of 2 years, we're recognizing that we are going to be faced with more and more maintenance projects, particularly road work. That's really one of the keys that's driving that R&M reserve funding level. So 2020 and beyond, over 20% of your assessment money will be going into the reserve. Now, money goes in and money comes out every year in the R&M reserve. But what we try to do is make sure that that funding level is sufficient to maintain an adequate balance in that reserve. And at the moment, we're looking at around $1 million, give or take, balance in the R&M reserve. I can tell you in advance that is going to get drawn down in 2019. We've got significant amounts for road work, roughly $1 million. Previously, we mentioned the new dehumidifier and repairs to the Wellness Center, $570,000 all in. And so that's going to draw that reserve down to probably something on the order of $250,000 by the end of 2019. It will rebuild. 2019 is a big road work year. So we're looking at what's actually needed for roads, and we'll be making some adjustments to that as the engineers get involved and advise us what we need to do. But make no mistake that R&M is a key focus of village finances this coming year. Now, the amenity reserve is one that we have funded for the last several years at 4.5% of your net collectible assessment. It is set up to save up money for future amenities. And so the future is now. We are just about to begin construction on the new Tellico clubhouse, on the Kahidi Community Center, and about 60% of that money is coming from the Amenity Reserve Fund. That's money that's been saved up over about 4 or 5 years' time, and more money will be added to that reserve in 2019, and then drawn down to pay some of the construction draws on the clubhouse projects. At the end of this year, that reserve will be virtually drained. Okay, but you look out in the 5-year plan, there are no new multi-million-dollar type amenities or demands that we are having to save for. There's some smaller projects, and they can be funded out of future additions to the amenity reserve. That's the way we've operated for a number of years, in that the Wellness Center, for example, money was saved up in advance of that project, and then the rest of it was borrowed. The time the Wellness Center was completed, the note on that project was a little over $2 million. That note today is in the $300,000 range. So it's almost paid off. It'll be paid off in mid-year 2020. And no doubt we'll have a note-burning celebration of some sort to recognize that milestone. Now, knowing that we are completing or just about to begin construction and will complete 2 major new amenities, we're shifting our focus. So that 4.5% of your assessment that had been going to the amenity reserve is now going to be diverted to the R&M reserve. So that's where that extra money, that difference between 17.25% and 20.75%, it's diverting 3.5 points from the amenity reserve toward the R&M reserve. That's in future years. Water and Sewer Reserve is our third major reserve fund. We typically keep around $1 million, give or take, in that reserve. But there's a difference here. The Water and Sewer Reserve is not funded from the assessment. It's funded from water and sewer user fees. So the people that use the water and sewer system pay for the water and sewer system and put money into the reserves for water and sewer. It's funded by 2 sources. Roughly 5% of your water and sewer bill goes into the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund. Also, when a new home gets permitted and constructed and water and sewer connections are made to tap into that system, then the owner of that new home will have pays up front those connection fees to buy into the water and sewer system that is already in place. So they didn't pay for it until they build a house and connect into it, but once you get a house under construction, you do pay into the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund. And then from that reserve fund, all of the water and sewer capital projects and some of the major maintenance is paid out of that fund. So again, money goes in, money comes out each and every year. We have one of the smaller reserves is the Dock Reserve Fund. It is fully funded from dock and personal watercraft rental rates or rental fees. Currently about 16.25% of the dock rentals and 8.25% of the PWC rentals go into that reserve, and they're used for capital and major maintenance projects coming back out of that reserve. So docks pay for what docks use. There's a small safety reserve fund, kind of a carryover actually from past practices with the Tellico Village Volunteer Fire Department. one time, the POA built up funds in that reserve to pay for major new equipment, like a new fire truck, or the last one that was done actually was the expansion of the fire hall. That was, I think, in 2012, thereabouts. We renegotiated the contract with the fire department. They are now paying for all of their capital needs out of the contract payments that we make to the fire department, plus their own fundraising within the community. So the POA is not currently adding any more money to the safety reserve, but it's available to meet safety-related needs within the village. And I mentioned the TRDA Reserve Fund, kind of a holding account. I put 1/12 of that $400,000 into it each month. So come December, when the $400,000 bill comes due, I have money in the bank to pay for that. In summary, the point of this discussion is that reserves are managed as an integral part of the budget process. We save up and pay for a large part of our new amenities out of those reserves. And where we can't save it all up in advance, we do take out some new bank financing, some new debt to pay for long-lived projects. You just simply can't save up enough to pay entirely from cash. I know we've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time. I will mention that for those of you that are interested, there's a one-page handout available on your way out. Didn't want to give it to you in advance because you would have read that and not listened to me. So pick it up on the way out if you're so inclined. And I thank you for your time and attention. Tellico Village is in great shape, and you've got a beautiful place to live. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce, Winston, Mitzi, and Parker.